Wow, it is sunny out this morning. It's very cold, but very sunny. A quick check of the temperature just suggested that it is -3 degrees outside, which for this time of year is totally normal. Hey, Ginny. I actually just let out the barn cats right before I hit record on the camera. When we have negative temperatures, so like if it's gonna be negative overnight, we'll typically let the barn cats go inside, and so they end up hanging out in the basement, causing all sorts of mischief. You know, they are not really house-trained cats. Like this one loves to rip up furniture. Pablo will try to pee in places he should not be peeing. So really the only place we feel like we can safely trust them is actually down in the basement. And I'm sorry, Ginny, don't let your feelings get hurt, girl. And here we have two critters who do not mind the cold whatsoever. Morning, guys. How are you doing? Hi, Abby dog. Hi, Toby dog. You guys have a good night? Look at those tails a wagging. Give me some of that puppy love, doggy dogs. Hi, hi. Good to see you. Hi. Yes, Abby, you know that if you sit, you get more petting. That's very good of you. Yes. And good to see you too, Mr. Toby dog. Hi, Toby dog. Hi, hi. Good to see you, Bubba. Now, even though the weather is cold, we need to get the water pumping, especially because the weather's cold, we need to get the water pumping. I started the winter using the quick connects. They're like these little devices that can let you just quickly connect hoses together. But the problem I find is with the quick connects, the cold weather actually creates all sorts of problems with getting a good seal. Sometimes the mechanism gets a little bit of moisture in there and they won't move. And so my experience over the years has really led me to believe that for the most part, I use the screw connections for all of my water. It's a little bit more annoying to have to do it each morning, but it creates a lot fewer problems that I have to deal with, like thawing out pipelines or trying to defrost connectors that are frozen. All right, water, don't fail me now. There we go. Close this one off. Now that water I just turned on, going to flow over those tubes that go over the goat house. Speaking of the goats, I actually see them sleeping down below. And it will run, or it should run, as long as there's no problems, all the way into the cattle trough. I'm listening closely. I think the water's running through here. Oh, it just turned on. Look at that, Anna Green Gables. Your water trough is filling up and it'll be ready to drink in just a few minutes. So actually right here we have Anne of Green Gables, who was one of our first 5 original cattle, as well as her daughter, Belinda Carlisle, who was actually the first calf ever born on our farm to us. And both of them are just sort of hanging out over here. It's kind of nice to see them here together like this. All right, dogs, you wanna go inside and visit the cattle with me? Come on. Let's go, come on. Inside. The dogs absolutely love coming in here and visiting with the cattle each morning. It's like an event that they seem to look forward to. And if I have some reason where I don't need to come in here and pump water or scoop poop or something, they actually genuinely seem disappointed. And so it's like a reason to always come out and visit the cattle. How's my Frosty Belinda? They're looking pretty good. Actually, all the cattle look pretty happy this morning. Just fed them hay the other day, so they got plenty of food to eat and they're pretty content. Just need the water. You know, actually, when it comes to Belinda, I'm pretty sure she's already pregnant. She's looking it. And if I had to guess, I think she or Bonnie McMurray, I think those two gals are going to be the 2 most likely to calf in April when we have like our first calves starting to drop, which is definitely something I'm going to be excited to see. Oh, look at them. It's so magnificent being out here in the morning. So in this collection of animals, we have Betty Rubble, who is the daughter of Annabelle. And then over here, we have Amanda Hugginkiss, who's actually the mother of Baby B. Where is Baby B? Yeah, I see Baby B over there with the 2 Charlet calves that we have. So now one question I often will get is about actually our hay and like, what is it and what's so special about it? It is actually fermented hay that comes from local fields in the area. Like here in Vermont's Northeast Kingdom, there's actually a lot of excess hay fields. And so that means that there's a lot of relative hay production. And so we buy this from a local farmer who just goes around haying various fields in the area. And so if I had to estimate, I would say that all of the hay that we feed on our farm probably comes from roughly a 5-mile radius of our farm. I get this question a lot from folks, but I don't actually hay our fields myself. It doesn't make sense for a couple of reasons. Number 1, it would be more equipment I have to buy. Number 2, it's more equipment I have to maintain. Number 3, it would actually take more time from me. And even though I'm already kind of time crunched and I always have a list of things I need to do much longer than the things that I can do, I think that would be a problem. And then the 4th thing is, if I cut hay from my farm, number 1, that's going to mean that I actually have less land to graze my cattle on. And number 2, it means that I'm going to be extracting nutrition. You know, every time my cattle graze our pasture and eat around here, essentially what we're doing is they're cutting the grass and helping maintain good grass species. They're trampling a lot of the weeds that I don't want. They're depositing their manure and fertilizing things. And so grazing actually has a lot more benefits for improving the pasture than feeding eating hay. And so since I'm still in the process of really rehabbing our farm and making some improvements, I just want to keep seeing the magic of what the cattle do on the pasture continue as much as possible and limit that. And so because of all of those reasons, that's why I don't think it actually makes sense for me personally to buy hay. At least right now. I mean, that can obviously change over time, but for the way our farm's set up, for the skills and equipment I have right now, and really what's going on economically and agriculturally in our area, it just is a no-brainer to buy my hay. Here we have Amelia Bedelia, our second largest cow on the farm. She's actually a Charolais cow, so it's a different breed. Cattle like Baby B right there, she's a Scottish Highland. But Amelia, Alice B. Toklas in the back there, Amelia's daughter, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and then Astrid, who's our largest cow, along with Astrid's daughter from last year, who you see right there, that's Betty White. You know, all of them are Charolais cattle. I purchased Astrid, Amelia, and Alice B. Toklas back in January of last year. They're part of an experiment that I'm doing where I want to actually see what it's like to have, you know, crossbred animals and see how they do on the farm versus the purebred Highlands. So basically my only bull on the farm is Macho Man Randy Savage, and he's a purebred registered Scottish Highland bull. And as he was with the ladies this past summer, my hope is that in particular Astrid and Amelia end up pregnant, and then those calves might be better suited for some of the things I do around the farm and the land, as well as might have bigger, beefier boys who could potentially make for better, more efficient meat animals. It's still way too early in that experiment to know if it's gonna work or not. I will say that some of the things that I've noticed is that the Charolais cattle are much more skittish and wild and harder to manage. I think part of that is how they've been raised, but I think the other bigger part is just from a breed perspective, Scottish Highland cattle are generally known as exceptionally docile cattle relative to a lot of others. And a lot of folks that I know will tell me that Charolais are much, much more skittish. And so I'm gonna stick with this experiment for a couple of years. You know, at this point, I potentially have 2 pregnant cows going into this spring. Next year, I hope to have 3 pregnant cows. And then the year after that, I'd actually hope to potentially have 5 pregnant cows that are all 100% Charolais mixed with my Scottish Highland bull, and I'll see how that goes. And then I'll make some decisions, I don't know, probably 2 or 3 years out. I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when it comes to cattle. Like, you know, they have a 9-month gestation period. It takes a couple of years before they're ready to be bred. And so to do an experiment like that, you've got to give yourself a good, healthy window of time. You can't expect to see results or make decisions in the span of like 6, 9 months, a year even. Like all of that's much, much, much too soon. Well, if it isn't my darling little Baby B. So Baby B was actually born 2 years ago on the farm. And so last year, Baby B and Alice B. Toklas sat apart from the rest of the herd, and they were actually grazing down here in this lower pasture, and they did not have exposure to the bull because I wanted them to have an extra year to grow. But this coming summer, when I turn the bull out with all of the other ladies, Baby B will be in the breeding herd, and so hopefully she'll be having a baby in the spring of 2026. That would be the goal. And no, Abbies can't have babies because they're fixed, nor do I think they should have babies. I'm gonna have to come out here with the sled and the shovel later this morning, start just scooping up poops. I'll come in here and do a pooper scooping, I don't know, every 2 or 3 days, just to keep it from getting too piled up with manure. I have some manure piles that I'm keeping over back on the other side by the barn. Also, when the warmer months come, I'll come in here with the tractor and do like a full scraping and cleaning. This whole area, my intention this winter was to let it get kind of sacrificed and beat down, and then I'm gonna actually be seeding it with some different grasses. And so having the regular pressure of the cattle in this space was very much by design, and so this won't look all that pretty come summertime, but I'm hoping in about a year or two it actually makes some significant differences and improvements from where it was. And it actually has some plants that are better suited for the ducks and geese and chickens who spend a lot of time in this area typically in the summer months. Here you have my 2 dogs and their personalities on display. There's the Abby personality, and then there's the stoic Mr. Toby Dog personality. Abby, stop it, come on, that's not nice. Good boy, and now good girl. See, that's what happens when you sit and stay. Yeah, good girl. Water trough is still filling up. Trying to get a drink of water there, Annabelle? Probably tasty. Yeah, look how the steam's coming off. That water is probably not any warmer than 40 degrees, but it's just got steam coming off of it because the air temperature is so gosh darn cold. All right, dogs, you ready to go keep doing more chores? Let's go, come on. Out with the dogs. Zoop. One of the most annoying things about breeding cattle is the fact that you have to maintain separate herds. And maintaining separate herds in the winter means I gotta keep my boys away from my girls. And when I'm keeping my boys away from my girls, it means I have to pump water to 2 locations. And given my current setup, I actually have to keep like draining hoses and clearing stuff. And actually most of my winter farm work involves pumping water and defrosting hoses or preventing hoses from getting frosted. Like I don't have to do nearly as much farm work in the winter as I do in the summer, but I don't know, in the winter I would say probably about 75% of the work is all about water. It's especially when you're in a cold climate like us, it's a big factor. Honestly, if the water wasn't so time consuming, I would probably spend about 20 minutes, 15 minutes a day doing chores, probably about 30 minutes every 3 days feeding hay. Like that would be my farm work for the winter, but that's not the case right now. Because the boys are in a separate area, they need a separate water trough. And so I always have to go through the draining process where, shut down the water. And then once this guy starts draining out, then I actually have to drain out the hose that the boys are using. Disconnect this guy here. And particularly on really cold days like today, you got to do it quickly, because the water can freeze inside the hose in a matter of minutes. If you do that, you're having to either break out the blowtorch or bring it inside. I typically like to hang the hose like this and let gravity draw the water down, and then just use my hand to flush it out. Like any of that water that you see right there, if that freezes inside the hose, tomorrow morning when I go to pump the water, it would be rock solid and I'd have to probably disconnect this entire hose and bring it inside. But yeah, now it looks like this pipe is clean. You also might be wondering, given how cold it is, why am I walking around with only one glove? And I actually find that it's better to just have your hands naked and expose it to water than get your gloves wet and then have your gloves soaked for the rest of chores, because that is the most miserable feeling on the planet. And that might be a tiny bit of hyperbole, but only a tiny bit. All right, you guys want to go see your birds? Is that what you're trying to tell me? Morning, birds! How's everybody doing today? It is downright toasty in here. It's about 30 degrees in here because it's so sunny. Like that sun beams down and heats up this greenhouse like you wouldn't believe. And so it's still a little bit below freezing in here, but it's not that bad at all, which is precisely why like a greenhouse like this, I think, is the ultimate coop to have your birds in if you're in a cold weather climate. Despite how toasty it is in here, I think it's time to let the birds out. Release the Quacken! Come on, everybody. So despite the fact that I say release the Quacken, it is always the geese and chickens that are the first ones out here. The ducks are always last to come out and most reluctant to come out. But the ducks were the first animal on our farm, and so they get that honor. All right, let's turn on this water now. I'm kind of thankful that ducks were the first animal that I had to maintain in a cold environment, because despite the fact that they're actually pretty well suited for the cold environment because they have like their own built-in down coats, their water management is way more complicated than chicken water management. And so it taught me some things early on that are lessons that I've carried with me to this very day. And probably the biggest lesson on that front is that my first year, actually my first 2 years of raising ducks, pretty much everything was filled water-wise with buckets, and I'd like have to carry like 40 or 50 gallons of water every single morning in 5-gallon buckets. So it's like back and forth trips actually from the house all the way out to the bird yard. And that experience really sucked, but it makes me grateful for how easy things are now. I'm not sure that's the best lesson to take away from it all, but it's definitely a lesson I took away from it all. Happy dog, are you eating some frozen goose poop? What are you trying to do there? All right, looks like our troughs are full. This is actually one of the few quick connects I have still out here, because it's actually handy for this one because it actually defrosts when the water runs through it, so I can disconnect it easily when I need to, and then I just drain out the water so that it'll be able to run again tomorrow. Now it's time to check in with our one injured goose. Come here, buddy. Hang on, hang on, hang on. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Oh, you're becoming more reluctant now. That's a good sign. I'm gonna have to give it a minute before I can catch it. But they actually have this like cut that was on the inside of the bill. But as I'm looking at it right now, it continues to scab up really well. And there was a couple times where the scab broke, but but now it seems like it's holding. Honestly, I was worried there for a little bit, but that type of injury, like when you have that kind of cut, there isn't a whole heck of a lot you can do with it. Like it's got to have access to water. You can't bandage it. You can't put too much on it. I want to be careful about like just randomly experimenting with antibiotics. And so, yeah, I'm doing my best with it, but it's still very much touch and go, and I'm watching very carefully to see how it does. And now it's time to feed the kitchen scraps to the chickens. Eat up, girls. Oh, crud. Oh, this is frozen solid. So the other day I actually switched the dogs over to a heated water bucket, and unfortunately it looks like it shorted out overnight, and now my heated water bucket is a unheated frozen block of ice. I'm gonna have to figure out what went wrong there and come up with a plan B. I really hate it when stuff like that happens. You know, overall with my animals, I'm not a huge fan of having like heaters or heated buckets and that sort of thing. And the main reason is because they can be so unreliable, and you don't want your animals depending on something that then breaks on them. You know, particularly for like birds, if you're heating their coop, number one, and probably actually most important, it's a massive fire risk. But number two, if you have a heater in your coop, if that heater breaks overnight in the depths of the cold, that temperature is going to drop so quick that it could actually create problems where it can just kill your birds because of the rapid temperature change. And so, no, I am not a fan of those things at all. I make a concession with the dogs because it's easy enough and they don't get it all messy or create problems with the actual bucket itself, which is a problem I've found in the past using heated buckets with geese and ducks specifically. But I guess we're gonna have to go to plan B for the dogs later this morning. And presently it looks like Abby's on plan Z. What were you doing there? She just keeps lying on her back like she wants me to rub her belly. Oh, you want me to rub that belly? You know? Aw. Hey, buddy. Hi. Yeah, Abby loves to have her belly scratched. It is like her favorite thing. Toby Dog likes it sometimes, but Abby Dog lives for it. Yeah, you want your belly scratched? Is this what this is? Is this what this is? Yeah. Oh, who's my big hulking belly scratch dog? Yes, you are. 110 pounds of belly love. That's what you are. You know, honestly, all of this makes me so happy right here. One of my absolute favorite parts about my life is just the fact that I get to come out here and talk to you guys and hang out with my animals and take care of them. It makes me feel exceptionally lucky. Isn't that right, buddy boy? Hang on. Food and water for the weirdos. There you go. Here's some food. Hang on, let me smash up the ice. Get you some fresh water. Now, Pablo Barn Cat, I'm glad to see that you found a nice sunny spot that's really comfortable to sit on. But this hay is for the goats, and I'm going to need to steal it from you, buddy. Sorry, old man, you're getting the boot. Come on. Come on. I know, the indignity, Pablo, the indignity. Good morning, boys. How are my goatiotises? How's it going, fellas? Come on, come on. You're getting your food here. I got all your food right here, kids. I know, you're a little too old to be called kids, but I think of you as kids. I'm gonna dump some hay over here, and then the stuff that you really want, the alfalfa pellets, are gonna go right here. So this is my first winter of keeping goats here on the farm. So far it has not been all that bad. They're relatively low maintenance. They have not caused any problems, so I have no goat complaints. A lot of people are asking me if I plan on getting any more goats. And the answer is I might get 1 or 2 more wethers, which are castrated males. All 3 of these guys are wethers, so they can't be bred. They don't do all the nasty buck things that buck goats will do, but they're just a joy to have around. While they're hanging out here in what's actually effectively our catnip patch, they will leave this area come the warm months, and they'll spend time kind of moving to a couple different parts around the farm. You know, when I got them at the end of the summer, I was really unsure of how to keep them, how to manage them. What I've been doing is doing the easiest thing possible just to learn how they behave and what they're like and get used to them and have them get used to me. And now that I feel like I have that sense of things, I'm actually feeling pretty good about trying to set up the temporary netting at different parts of the farm and just moving them around every week or two to different spots where they can clear brush and scrub and all sorts of stuff like that. And so they're not really here for meat or milk or breeding. Their job is essentially to be groundskeepers here on the farm. But at least in the winter months, they're just serving as hungry mouths to feed, but they're adorable mouths to feed, and so I don't mind feeding them. Isn't that right, Mr. Learn? Okay, you want to go back to eating your alfalfa. You don't want any of the other boys to get more alfalfa than you get. Basically, for winter feed, it's a mixture of hay, alfalfa, and then, for example, like our Christmas tree or neighbors' Christmas trees or any sort of greenery that I can cut this time of year, I'll give it to them. But I try not to give them too much because that's not necessarily the best thing for their health. But if I can give them like a balanced amount, it actually works out pretty good. I think I figured out the problem why this water bucket wasn't working. It looks like I somehow accidentally disconnected the cord for the bucket from the extension cord, and so that is a good reason for it to freeze solid like that. I'll bring that stuff into the mudroom when I'm done, let it thaw out, and then I'll bring it back out later this morning. But for the time being, I'm gonna have to let the dogs just drink from an old-fashioned 5-gallon bucket like this. Even though there's not a way that my dogs will even drink 1/5 of that bucket, the reason I give them so much water at once, particularly when it's unheated like this, is because that extra water keeps it from freezing longer. So the more mass the water has, the longer it's gonna take for that water to freeze. And so yeah, that is how we get by here on cold days like this when we got all the animals to take care of and doing the whole farm thing. And so I hope you guys learned something. If you have more questions about how we actually deal with the cold temps or other things like that, just drop them down in the comments. And who knows, maybe we'll make another video about this real soon. Thanks for watching, everybody.